Welcome to Newcastle Borough Council's Cabinet meeting this afternoon, a bit later than scheduled at 4 o'clock instead of 2. Welcome to Cabinet members that are joining us in the room, also to our officers, and also to a member of the opposition as well who's here. Also, welcome to those people that are either viewing this live online or viewing it later. If you'd like to see the agenda, there's a link to it below the video in the column there in the comments. I'd like to welcome Councillor Jill Heatham, who's our portfolio holder for safer and community safety and wellbeing. David Hutchinson, our portfolio holder for sustainable environment, and Councillor Andy Fear, who's our portfolio holder for sustainable strategic planning, and also our deputy leader, Stephen Sweeney, who's also got the portfolio for finance, town centres and growth, and I'm council leader Simon Tang. We've got apologies today from Councillor Jill Waring, so if you can make a note of those. Item 2 on the agenda is declarations of interest. Do I have any for items on the agenda from cabinet members? Not seeing any. Item 3 is minutes of the previous meeting, which are attached on page 5 to 9, 10, and they're from the cabinet meeting of the 18th of July. Can we agree those as a correct record? Thank you. Item 4 is our Walleys Quarry update, our regular update, which we receive from our officers. So it allows us to ask questions about the ongoing issues at Walleys Quarry. And since our last meeting and announced a couple of weeks ago is of further breaches by the operator, Category 3 and Category 2, which are contained within the report, which I'm going to ask the Chief Executive to just run through very quickly in a moment. I think there's been a lot of public concern, obviously, about those, caused by people that are still being affected by the odours from the quarry, and a lot of questions about how this affects our abatement notice process. I'm sure Martin will cover that during his remarks about the report. So I'll hand over to Martin now to take us through the report.
Thanks, Chair. So the report follows the set format that we've had in previous times, and I will talk a little bit about the impact of those two car forms on our abatement notice process. But in terms of the overall position here, you will see we set out in paragraph 3 the complaint data coming into the council and to the EA. In paragraph 4, the information coming from the air quality monitoring stations, and also then in paragraph 4 some of the trend data. So in terms of the complaint data, first of all, you will see that August, we had an increase in complaints back in June, and that has now through July and August come back down again, which is pleasing to see. Within the body of the report, we only carry sort of 3 months data, and we've got the bigger picture in the appendix. And if you do take time to look at the appendix, you'll see that while we have got 40 odd complaints in August, and that's significant, it's really quite dwarfed compared to what we've seen in years gone by with this particular site. In August, we had not just days with no complaints, but also consecutive days with no complaints, which was is quite unusual. So the overall trend appears to still be going in the right direction. In terms of paragraph 4 and the data coming from the now 3 air quality monitoring stations, you will see that we've got a fairly low level of exceedances of the WHO annoyance threshold across July and across August. Gallingale, as ever, shows the highest levels, the highest instances there. What we are seeing now is the hydrogen sulfide levels being monitored here have reduced to such a level that actually the averaging out effect of this particular reporting is actually becoming of diminishing use to us, because it is evening out the peaks and troughs. And it's, whereas if we went back to when this was when we first got involved in this, in shaping up the abatement notice, etc., and we had a serious exceedances here, we would have seen a reasonable percentage of the time that the annoyance threshold, the 30-minute average annoyance threshold, was being breached. Now what we're seeing is those are showing up as zeros, and the annoyance that we're seeing is actually in peaks within that are actually now being lost within those averages. So I'm working with colleagues at the moment to see how we might be able to reflect peaks rather than this average to give a slightly more to give some data that probably more closely reflects residents' experience. 4.3 shows that we still have got, the graph there shows we've still got a pretty good correlation between the complaints to ourselves, the complaints to the Environment Agency, and the exceedances at the monitoring stations, and in particular Gallingale. So you see that tracking is still there. So in terms of the two car forms, these arise from a visit, an unannounced inspection by the EA of the site on the 7th of June, and also a further uninspected on the 19th of June. And both of the car forms relate to aspects of the capping that's being deployed on the site. Members will remember that the overall strategy for addressing the issue of fugitive emissions from the site is contain, capture, destroy, and the contain element is secured by increasing the capping at the site. So the first lower non-compliance, the category 3 non-compliance on the 7th of June, is to do with how the geotextile membrane is laid underneath the clay capping. So there were concerns that were identified by the Environment Agency to do with the degree of overlap and also the welding of the geotextile. The more serious category 2 car form, which was related to the 19th of June, is to do with the defects in the temporary capping that's on the flanks within the site, and the EA, as the principal regulator, have given Walleys until the 30th of September to remediate that and put right any of the missing temporary clay capping that they had identified. So and they will continue to monitor that. Now the question has been raised, I guess, on social media and other places. Well, with those two gaps, does that mean that there is a breakdown in best practical means or best available techniques on the site, and therefore should the authority be moving now to prosecute against its abatement notice? And I'm going to just take a minute or two just to talk a little bit about that. So you'll be aware we have the abatement notice in place. It took us about something over a year, I guess, to actually get that abatement notice put in place from the point where we served it through various legal process to actually then secure that through mediation. As I've said before, our enforcement against that abatement notice needs to be in line with the council's enforcement policy. So this isn't a binary stop-go decision. It's not a position where we say, okay, there's a fault on site, therefore that means that the council can prosecute against the abatement notice. So if we, at the moment, we're still reviewing the April, May, June position, and the EA's latest reports on this feed into this. But if our conclusions from April, May, June show that there was a nuisance and that there was a breach of the abatement notice, then even at that stage, we need to go through an iterative process. So the first part of that would be to, in a formal setting, put our findings, and there'd be a right of reply. We'd need to look at whether or not the problem had been remedied in the meantime. Now, clearly, the EA have set a time frame remedy this by the 30th of September. If the problem is remedied, then the public interest in using the prosecution of the abatement notice to secure the abatement of the nuisance would be very, very weak. If it's not, then we'd be looking at, is there a plan in place to remedy that? And as I say, there's an iterative process that we would go through. So we would prosecute if there was a continued failure to abide by the abatement notice, and we were content that it could be proved that the linkage was beyond reasonable doubt. So, you know, as I've said before, we're at a completely different level of proof in terms of prosecuting against an abatement notice needs to be beyond reasonable doubt. Securing the abatement notice needs to be on balance of probability. So there would be an awful lot of process to go through. It's not a binary stop-go situation. Getting the abatement notice took us about a year. Actually prosecuting, I suspect, would take significantly longer than that because of the process that we go through. What I would also say, I think it's important to remember, the Environment Agency are the lead regulators for this site. They are using their powers to identify particular problems and require remedial action to be taken. We're entering a time of year now where typically there has been, you know, the autumn has been a time of concern for us. We will see as we go into the autumn whether or not the actions that are taken in the light of these defects identified by the Environment Agency have effect, and therefore reduce the odours and reduce the problems. But I would reiterate again, we're at a fundamentally different place with the odours off this site compared to where we were when we started our work on it. So, you know, my focus and the focus of the team is to get the problem resolved, as opposed to necessarily sort of rush. I think there's an expectation that we can simply rush to a sort of a binary let's prosecute. It's not that simple. So that's it in a nutshell. It's not that simple.
Thank you. And I think the point needs to be made, it's not that simple. And it's not because we're treating it that way. It's because there's a legal process to follow that sits outside, or else we will be, you know, we'll be doing the wrong thing by pursuing something that's not thoroughly been investigated and a case been made. But I will say, thank you for that, Martin, and the full response. Hopefully people can watch that and see that the council is still doing all it could. But I think one of the key things of the capture philosophy, contain, capture and destroy, well, they've been proven to be by the category 2 that they haven't been containing it, have they, as per what is required during that period. And again, that is the company, they're not doing that. And of course, as we know, the EA have made this request that they rectify that. And of course, the EA have the powers to do a lot more than we could ever do to rectify the situation at Walleys Quarry. And that includes, you know, sort of ceasing operations as well if they needed to, or ordering them to do anything on that site that would bring it back into compliance as well. So the EA are the main regulator on the site. I'll open it up now to comments from Cabinet members. Councillor Fear, is your mic working okay? No, if you could use Councillor Hutchins. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that. No, it's listening to what we've heard from the officers. At one level, I feel happy. We've got a trend that's going in the right direction, but I think all of us are going to be a little bit fed up about what we read on page 6 of the report and these 2 breaches. I do think, you know, we need to know why the company has let us down in this way. They clearly have let the local community down by doing this. Going near the site on a regular basis, it has become a little bit more aromatic recently. I think it's fair to say. And what I just wonder is whether we shouldn't be, particularly if they fail to do this by the end of the month, whether we shouldn't be thinking about drafting a letter expressing our disappointment about that and pointing out that there are consequences which could follow if things are not remedied PDQ.
Martin, comments?
Members be aware we're in regular dialogue with the operator about all aspects of what's happening on the site. What I would say is, if we were minded to rate, I think that would need to be done in the context of due process. So I think the concerns being raised might actually be, if there's concerns to be raised politically, I think perhaps through the liaison forum might be the way to do that, rather than actually have a dual track in terms of the legal process that we might be involved in.
Thank you. And also say, obviously, of the offices of our local MP as well, which are obviously a major issue for him as well. This has been and continues to be so. But I think you're quite right about the liaison committee. There is a meeting tomorrow night, and I'm sure this will come up. There are elected members around the table. There are community representatives as well. And I think that's the place also to raise this. And I certainly will doing that as part of my role on there as Staffordshire County Council's representative for my division of Westlands and Thistlebury. And that is available a few days after the meeting. It will be published on the operator's website. The video from that meeting also will be published on the council's website in due course, so people can see what the response is of the operator to any questions. And of course, the EA are there to ask them their view on this. And I think if part of the EA give a report update to every liaison meeting, and I'm sure it will cover the issues from the 7th of June and the 19th of June and allow us to also to ask questions about that. Opens up to any other questions from Cabinet members on the report. Steve?
I haven't really actually, because I think that's that more or less sums up the situation with the liaison committee having it and see what the side of the argument is. And I think the deadline on the 30th of September I've seen is, it's not far away. And no, I don't think I've really got anything to add, but in fact, I agree with you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just one more point to add for me, which isn't really covered in the borough's update, but there is an ongoing issue with the lorry arrangements, particularly in the morning time. And the operator received planning permission to allow vehicles on the site an hour before opening. And that seemed to have dealt with some of the issues, but we have had recently, and I've seen exchanges between the county council and the operator and from residents about lorries actually starting to queue before 6 p.m. now. So that is talks and negotiations are carrying on between the operator and the county council on that, because that has been proving an issue of highway safety on Cemetery Road and streets around it. It seems as if even allowing it to open an hour before and allow lorries to queue on site down the ramp towards the operating area still hasn't cured that. Just more lorries are probably coming now and are on the road. So that needs to be watched very closely. I know the county council looking at that to ensure particularly highway safety as well for residents and people going to work at that hour in the morning. So I just thought I'd throw that in as well. But we've got the recommendation before us from the report that we received this update, as we've said, part of our monthly ongoing updates. We note the contents of the report, and obviously we've asked questions of Martin and challenged and raised some of the issues that residents have raised with us over the last few weeks, particularly on those two breaches which have come to light over the last few weeks. So all agreed with that? Thank you. Item 5 on the agenda is the medium-term financial strategy 24-25 to 28-29, and Steve's going to lead on this for us.
Yeah, thank you again. This is the first sort of outing for the MTFS for this year. Full council agreed the MTFS for the period 23-24 to 27-28 back in February 2023 as part of the budget setting process. This report updates assumptions regarding the financial pressures facing the council from that time and sets out a strategy for developments of the 24-25 budget and MTFS for 24-25 to 28-29. The current forecast around financial pressures facing the council is for a gap in 24-25 at £2.751 million. And over the 5-year period, the MTFS 5.082. Considerable pressure will continue to be placed on the council's finances in the medium term as a result of a number of national issues. These include the proposed local government pay award offer, the additional pressures that rising inflation and interest rates are or will be placing on the council in terms of fuel and utilities, contractor costs, supplies and services, and the rising costs of temporary accommodation that the council is required to provide for vulnerable and homeless residents. Work on the detail of the 24-25 budget, including investment and savings proposal, is underway and is being overseen by an efficiency board chaired by the leader of the council. The first time that met was actually today. Draft budget proposals will be presented to Finance, Assets and Performance Scrutiny Committee in December. The council agreed a 10-year capital strategy in February 23. The capital strategy sets out how the council will invest capital resources to support service delivery and facilitate the achievement of key objectives. The strategy has been reviewed and updated, including expected capital receipts from asset sales. It should be noticed the MTFS will need to be updated in the coming weeks regarding the council's carbon journey to net zero by 2030. Further details will be provided in a report which will be taken to Cabinet in October, following which the MTFS will be updated accordingly. Part of the capital programme review considers the council's green agenda on current projects in order for the council to align the budget to the net zero priority. The table in paragraph 2.14 details the key dates of the events to take place before the 24-25 budget is approved at full council. Now, if you turn to your form and look at the back page of it, you'll find something called Appendix A with MTFS gaps. Now, the two that jump out at you, well, they jump out at me, is the pay awards of £730,000 is going to be found extra, and temporary accommodation for vulnerable residents, which is another £500,000. These are the two pressures really that is causing us some. What's the word? It's the major task of what we've got to do. The rest of the things really is the stuff that we'd expect to get every year. I've only got elected in 2006, so I can't say before that. But I've never known a council when there's not been a gap to fill. So I don't know what it must have been like around the millennium when there wasn't. It must have been lovely. But I've never known that. But that's where we are at the moment. We've got £2.5 million to find, and the process of finding it has just begun. The first meeting, I say, was today. Cute. Can we talk about that letter? Okay. Also, I've got the first draft of a letter here. Every council in the country will have these problems. Every single council will have the same two problems that we've got. It's not the slightest bit original. I've got a letter here to write, probably I think to the Prime Minister, pointing out the two things: the homelessness and the pay rise, the two pressures that we've got. So every council have these pressures, and I would assume that every council is sending a similar letter to the government, like we did at the beginning of COVID, when the first check we had off the taxpayer was something like £70,000, which went in a morning. And then the next one was 2.5 million or something like that. And this will be the same scenario. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, I back sending this letter to the government and also copying in our local MPs as well. And anybody that's seen the Municipal Journal, which is the local government newspaper, will see in the front page last week relating to those pressures you're talking about for the temporary accommodation, which are hitting councils across the country. And on top of that, with the inflationary pressures due to the the National Pay Award, that has meant that this year is more difficult than usual. So I think the government, as they've done in the past, as you've said, Steve, relating to the COVID crisis, we're in a cost of living crisis at the moment. And to enable us to continue to provide the services at the level we want to, will require, hopefully, some funding from central government to make up the gaps relating to the pay increase. And also this homelessness temporary accommodation bill, which they do. Obviously, the government give us a certain amount of money for each case, but unfortunately that's not enough to cover the cost of the temporary accommodation. So as we see in the report, it's gone up significantly over the last year and can only go up even more so with changes to Renting Act coming later in the year, which may take even more rented properties out of the rented stock, so that more people, when they fall into difficulties, will need to be temporary housed by the council on the lines we've just talked about. But I think overall, though, the budget, this is a financially stable and well-run council. We're engaging in a significant regeneration project, which is really the thrust of the council over the next few years. And you'll see the next item on the agenda is all about that, relating to York Place and Midway. And over the past, since this administration come in, there's been over 10 million savings made to the budgets. And yet we've enhanced services across the board, including improving recycling, investing in projects such as the refurbishment of Kidsgrove Sports Centre. So we know what we can do with less money. But this year, again, we have a savings target of 2.75 million. And as Stephen said, the process has already begun to find those savings, and also to account for those inflationary pressures that we're seeing on increased fuel bills, increased energy costs, vehicle and fuel costs, etc. throughout that are going throughout the entire economy, affecting everybody. So the council's affected just like everybody else in every other local authority. So we have the MTF in front of us here, which I think is a good MTFS, and thank you for the work that the finance officer and her team have been putting in there in conjunction with Steve as the portfolio holder. And we've been asked that the funding pressure of 2.751 million for 24-25 and 5.83 over the 5-year period covering the MTFS be noted. And we also agree that the approach regarding the development of saving and income generation proposals in the medium term be endorsed. And of course, we've got that table at the back showing where they are. And note that the continued uncertainty regarding the medium term impact of local government funding and the cost of living crisis, and that the portfolio holder for town centres and growth will write to central government and our local MPs to lobby for funding to assist in the additional pressures in respect of national pay award and temporary accommodations. Those are recommendations. Open up now to any comments from cabinet members. Andy.
Thanks very much, Simon. Again, it's a little bit mixed, isn't it? Like the Walleys Quarry item, I think we've got good management here, and we are being placed under significant pressure by national issues. And I also endorse the idea of writing to the government, but also to our local MPs. And I think we should look hard to them to lobby on behalf of, frankly, their constituents to make sure that there is some sort of remedy for this, because the pressure goes on. Hard work has been done by our team here, and it would be a shame if that hard work was undone by stuff that we have no control over at the centre.
Thank you, Andy. Any other comments from cabinet members? Anything further to say, Steve? Nope. Those are the recommendations for us. Long start of a journey, as we always start this time of the year, which will end in the February full council. But before then, we're bringing back savings proposals later in the year, and also our scrutiny committee will have a chance to have a look 3 times at the budget between now. That's FAP scrutiny between now and when we set the budget in February. So the recommendations I've read out. Do we all agree? Thank you. Next item is item number 6, procurement of a joint venture development partner. And as I just said on the previous item, the thrust of the council going forward is to deliver that once in a generation regeneration opportunities. And we're bringing proposals today which will help us to move forward 2 of the schemes in the regeneration plans we've got, and that is in York Place and the Midway, which we're going to be using obviously Future High Street Fund money and also Town Deal money. And the York Place development will include homes, offices, shops, and a public open space, which will be replacing a dated and now closed shopping area, which has really been holding that area of the town back for many years. This will give a new look to that area, and hopefully bring in more shops and offices and people to visit the town and footfall, particularly as we develop the rest of Rycroft as well. And also it involves the Midway redevelopment as well, which will, of course, when the replacement car park on Midway, Rycroft, the Castle car park, comes into operation, the Midway will close, and then that will become open for a development on there. And we're really pleased. It's already been announced in the media, but today we're being asked to endorse an agreement to appoint nationally renowned property developers, Capital and Centric, to bring our vision for the town centre to life. They are, as I say, nationally known. They're working over in the city on the project over there, and also they're involved in Stockport, Manchester, Liverpool, and other towns across the northwest. And they bring a different approach to building. They're looking to possibly to retain the original building frame in York Place, which enable us to save costs and also move quicker with the development. And they use a sustainable approach to building and using the best environmental methods and cost-effective methods thereof as well. And these developments, as I say, intend to endorse the footfall in the town, support local businesses, and to establish the town centre as that vital hub for residents and visitors, whether they live, they work, they enjoy their leisure time, and also shop in the town centre as well. And capital centres have a reputation by those other schemes, including the goods yard over in Stoke, for innovative and energy efficient developments. And that will enhance, hopefully, our town centre and also bring people in, as I say, with some exciting proposals. Construction of the Castle Car Park, which will be the first thing people begin to see on the Rycroft, is due to begin shortly. And then obviously we hope to bring more proposals back later in the year for the rest of the development on Rycroft. But today we're being asked to, as I say, support the appointing Capital and Centric as our development venture partner on this. And I think it's a really good move for the town. It begins to start to deliver on that vision we had with that government investment. And we have a way of making two of these proposals come to life. And hopefully people will get behind these proposals. I think Capital and Centric will bring an exciting element to this, which is what we need in our town centre. But I'll hand over to Steve now for further comments on the proposals.
Yeah, I think this is a tremendously exciting proposal. Capital and Centric are major sort of players in this market. And if you go to Stockport and go to the viaduct at Stockport and look down, you'll find their developments, old mills that they're redoing. You go into Manchester and the buildings and there they're doing, and their ethos, I think their way of conducting the business is superb. And they were desperate to come to Newcastle because I think they see the council as a forward-looking progressive council that doesn't want to sit around and do nothing. The vision for the Midway car park, I've not seen it yet, and I can't wait because I've got no imagination. And how do you make something sexy and glamorous out of the Midway car park? Well, I believe these people will, and I absolutely cannot wait to see what they come up with. Finance-wise, the way it works is, for example, we would borrow the money to do the what's the shop centre? York Place. To do York Place, we would build it. We would borrow the money. We would build it, and then when it was completed, we would basically sell it to Capital and Centric. They would give us the money that we borrowed back, and they would pay the interest that we incurred on the loan. So they, in fact, get the building at cost value, if you like, because we net money out of it. So we've got no 40 years of debt. We've got no risk involved in do we rent the building? Do we not rent the building? Is somebody going to have an office and all this sort of thing? All that is taken care of by Capital Centric. And I personally think it's a superb proposal. I absolutely totally endorse it. And if you could meet Capital Centric, you'd know what I mean, because they're so enthusiastic and they're so keen on Newcastle. I'm very proud of Newcastle, and you can feel the same sort of feeling with them. It really is. It's tremendous. It's a very exciting proposal. And I absolutely commend it to the Cabinet. Thank you.
Of course, Capital and Centric have a record of delivery, as we've said as well. It's not just all talk and glamour. It's actually a delivery, which we've seen across the northwest of England. And they see Newcastle as their next place to develop. So open it up now to Cabinet members. Andy?
Thanks, Simon. Yes, I travel to Manchester on a regular basis, and I've seen the developments there at Stoke railway station, but Stockport as well. I mean, where the old bus station used to be, looking down from the viaduct. And I think, you're quite right, Simon. The important thing here is that we see delivery. These are projects which are moving ahead. They're not mired and stagnant. I think that the financial model we've got here is a better one than the one we had before. So that's manifestly a plus. I think the way they're going to tackle construction, as you know, I'm not the greatest fan of the environmental movement, but nonetheless, I think here that the reuse of buildings, the remoulding of buildings makes an awful lot of sense. And it will be interesting to see what they say about the Midway. We have got a really good opportunity there once we get a proper modern car park online to remold what is, has been pretty much an eyesore, hasn't it? I mean, it's a typical piece of nasty 1960s architecture, and it would be nice to bring something new and fresh to the town in that respect. So yes, I think this is a very interesting report, and I'm more than happy to endorse it.
I mean, there will be people that say, oh, you've just taken a scheme through planning and got planning permission, why you're not going to press ahead and build a brand new development. I think the point of basically showcasing what we wanted on this site, which we did with the planning application, has led to, the interest from Capital and Centric to come in and show us a way of doing this that is actually affordable given the restraints which we have, because of course the Future High Street Fund money and the town deal money isn't worth what it was when the government gave it to us, because inflation has eaten away at it. We know that interest rates have risen, so when we borrow, we have to pay higher interest rates. So this model, the Pagabo framework, development framework, which we're embarking on, which we'll be given permission to, takes us through a process where we can actually deliver an affordable scheme on this site, which is what we want, and actually to move the regeneration of the town forward, which we will do. Andy, you want to add something?
Yeah, just wanted to say, I mean, it would seem perverse in the extreme, wouldn't it, to say, well, we've got something, but now we've found something better, but because we had something, we'll just discard something that we found that's better. I mean, this actually shows that we are looking in a dynamic way at the town centre. And again, perhaps it's worth remembering this is a very go-ahead company, and they were attracted to us. We didn't go begging to them. So in that respect, it says something, I think, about the way this council has been run.
Thank you. Any other cabinet members? Jill?
Yeah, I think it's exciting times at the moment for Newcastle. I'm really looking forward to this vision that's coming, because when you hear about what they're going to do and the improvements to the town, I say bring it on.
Thank you, Councillor Tagg. Introducing a joint venture development partner to share the risk and presumably the anticipated revenue associated with the planned development in the town centre. It suggests that there may be an emerging concern about the scale and appropriateness of the development for this borough. Can the portfolio holder clarify what safeguards are in place to protect the council's financial reputation against the uncertainty of costs and benefits?
And Councillor Sweeney's going to answer that for you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Rocky. The potential partnership with Capital and Centric is a means to reduce the council's financial exposure, as the business model used by Capital and Centric will result in the asset created being purchased by them upon completion, thus removing the finance costs of the borrowing required for the development, and it removes the risk of under-occupancy of the completed scheme, in short, protecting the council from the financial risk of the lengthy capital and interest repayments and potential revenue shortfalls. Capital and Centric are now investigating retaining the concrete structures to incorporate these into the development rather than a full demolition and rebuild, thus potentially saving millions of pounds on the development costs, reducing the carbon footprint of the developments and reducing timescales of delivery. These aspects are therefore worthy of our full consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Sweeney. We will then move now to the recommendations, because there's no follow-up question, Councillor. Note the progress made to date with the procurement exercise of the joint venture development delivery partner for the plans for the key town centre sites. 2, note the benefits of Capital and Centric's operating model as set out in paragraph 2.14 to 2.21 of this report. 3, agree to the procurement through the direct award under the Pagabo development management framework of Capital and Centric to develop plans and develop business cases for York Place and Midway, former Midway car park, as hopefully it will be then, to the cost not exceeding 256,500. 3, authorise the Deputy Chief Executive in consultation with the portfolio holder for town centres and growth and portfolio holder for one council, people and partnerships to progress discussions with third parties for the sale or lease of portion of the York Place site. And 5, authorise the Deputy Chief Executive in consultation with the portfolio holder for finance, town centres and growth and portfolio holder for one council, people and partnerships to undertake the necessary preparatory works for the closure of Midway car park in autumn 2024, of course, when the replacement car park will be open. And just on number 4 there, Steve, perhaps you might want to say a little bit about that, the possibility of the chain of pubs having an interest in York Place, and it is included in there that we talked to them about bringing an entertainment venue to the site.
That's another part of the exercise, and it's not this exciting. I don't want to name names or anything, but it's a public brewery that wants to be involved in the centre, and obviously pays the cost for doing it. And I think that has the potential for being another exciting angle of this, what is generally a very, very exciting project.
And even before the capital and centric developers came involved, we were having expressions of interest from people that wanted to go into a New York Place development. We hope even more will come forward. Now, some of them we can't share with you, but we also know that the Astley Circus Centre is going to be based in York Place as well. And if we can get an event space for a pub chain in there, that's another one. And if we can get an office accommodation in there as well as everything else in the retail, we can really make something good on York Place. And I think the framework we just agreed with Capital and Centric will help us to deliver that and a good development for our town to help us to go forward. So we've got the recommendations before us. Do we all agree? Thank you. We'll move then to item 7, which is our asset management strategy, and Steve's going to introduce this one.
Yeah, thank you, Lee. There's some asset management strategy here is an update on the previous one. It's a borough-wide asset management strategy. It aligns with ongoing substantial investment in Newcastle and Kidsgrove town centres, as well as other areas of the borough. Since 2018, the council has successfully raised capital by selling surplus council land and buildings, earmarking the proceeds for community projects, equipment upgrades and maintenance. This proactive asset management approach has generated £6.1 million for these investments by maximising asset value. And these are listed on this second page, in page 54. The land that we sold is just carrying is all the Labour proposals. Basically, we just carried forward and sold them for them. The refreshed strategy includes plans for the £30 million development at Rycroft and York Place, long-term regeneration initiatives in Nutton, and a shared public services hub in Kidsgrove. Furthermore, it explores the potential of various sites for an ongoing disposal programme, which will include local consultation, emphasising the council's focus on sustainable development and prudent resource management. Now, one of those sites is the car park on Hassel Street that has been quite a lot of interest over. It isn't our intention at all to sell all that car park. To sell part of it, yes, but not all of it, and have a short stay, sort of maybe 2 or 3 hours for the shop, so that their customers can just nip over the road and use them. That's all part of what the developing strategy and what we're going to do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Really support the strategy going forward. This is our second asset management strategy that we've had as an administration since we came in December 2017. And as Steve said, the first part of this was delivering what had already been highlighted. Some of them were green spaces that were put forward. I know it's very sort of topical at the moment to talk about green spaces sold for housing, but we inherited a whole list of them from the previous Labour administration, and we've delivered the sale of all of those and brought in that money Steve talks about, to help us to deliver capital programmes, not only for regeneration, but for, to keep the council going, and new vehicles for our fleets, etc. all has to be paid for. And then looking forward, we're refreshing this plan, and we've obviously, as pointed out by Steve, got a programme to take us forward. I just wanted to dwell a bit longer on the car parks in the town centre, of course, and particularly Hassel Street, which has created some responses from people, and also have a copy of a petition here, which I think is in 3 parts from 3 of the businesses. I've met with a couple of the businesses there at a recent consultation on the local plan. And early when we thought about this, and we thought about the various car parks, Goose Street is in there, the Borough car park is in there, Hassel Street is in there particularly, we did have the idea of leaving parking spaces available there to be used by the public because of the local businesses around there. So that has always been part of the plan. And speaking to the businesses there, they've expressed the importance of car parking spaces, particularly at Hassel Street, helps their business. Some of those businesses are where people can't walk a particular length to get to the therapy or whatever, and we must take that into account. So I think on that site, there's potential there for for spaces to be left. And as also Steve said, to keep them to, 1 to 3 hours. So they're there for people visiting the businesses, not for longer. But of course, just around the corner, just down the road, there is 3 other car parks which can be used, which have got short stay, long stay as well, as by J2, by Barracks Road, and also the Windsor Street car park. So there is parking within the vicinity. And of course, there is on-street parking for an hour already on Hassel Street as well. But we completely accept that the need for parking for the local businesses, and that will be included in any proposals we bring forward for Hassel Street, Goose Street and Borough Arms, and that's an assurance today from the Cabinet that will take place. And of course, as Stephen said in his opening remarks, there is a consultation process that the council goes through before it disposes of any land, and each of the lands identified in the wherever they are identified in the strategy would have to go through that process as well. So the recommendations before us is that we approve our asset management strategy for 23-28, and the Deputy Chief Executive, in consultation with the portfolio holders for finance, town centres and growth, be given delegated authority to develop a disposal programme and to undertake that consultation on the disposal of the sites set out in the asset management strategy, which we're agreeing today. And the strategy is considered by the Finance, Assets and Performance Scrutiny Committee at its meeting next Monday, and feedback will be provided to the portfolio holder for finance, town centres and growth on the outcome of that scrutiny. So I think a good proposal, a good programme to take us forward, a delivery over the last 4 years plus, and I think it's really important that we do have an asset management strategy that enables us to then use that income to improve services and to take this borough forward. And that's something this council has always done over many, many years, and this is just a refresh of that, taking us forward. Open it up to comments from Cabinet members on the asset management proposals. Andy?
Oh, thanks, Simon. No, it's again, it's a very detailed document. It seems to me to set out a strategy which makes sense. Like you say, Simon, we've listened to some concerns that have been raised about very particular issues, understandably, with local business. So again, I think this is a dialectical process in that regard. But I'm happy to commend the report. It seems to me a good and solid one.
Members wish to comment? Not seeing any. So I've read the recommendations out. All agreed that we adopt the asset management strategy. Agreed. Thank you. Our next item, item 8, is the local planning enforcement plan, and Andy's going to introduce this.
Thanks very much, Simon. In some ways, the report says it all, doesn't it? I mean, there's a little reference there to the government saying that having a proper enforcement policy is something which establishes public confidence in the planning system. That's on page 4 or page 98, depending on which numbers you're having a look at. And I think this document, which has been to planning, it's had a bit of a once over in a variety of fora, does that. I mean, the nice thing about it, I think, is it sets out very clearly what we can do with enforcement. It also sets out what we can't do with enforcement, and that also is important. I think it makes it transparent to the public what's available, what isn't available. We go through it. We can see on page 102 or page 8, depending on your point of view, that we will rigorously pursue any outstanding section 106 planning obligation payments, and that's been something which has again excited the public in the past. So there's a statement of clear intent at that level. It's nice to see that the principles established by the Emperor Trajan at the beginning of the 2nd century AD are also embedded in this document, in that we will not accept anonymous complaints about things, but we will keep complainants' confidence in that respect, but manifestly we can't have people being victimised in that regard. I think the appendices set out the priorities the council's got, so those are clearly visible for us. And the second appendix, the toolkit, sets out the ways that we can go about remedying these things. And I draw colleagues' attention to the fact that there's bits in there, again, about stuff that I think we've all, as members, come across, issues with hedges, dodgy work to trees, things like that, and how those can be remedied. I'd like to thank those in the planning section who worked very hard to put this together. I think it's a good document. It's a transparent document. And I look forward to comment from colleagues, but I would commend this document to you.
Thank you, Andy. Yes, support you in that. I think it's a really important document. As we know over the years, there's been a lot of planning enforcement issues. That I've spent many years on the planning committee, getting very frustrated about planning enforcement issues. And of course, we have two sorts of roles in enforcement, don't we? On David's portfolio, we have the enforcement issues like noise and odours. Going back to the Walleys Quarry issue, we and air quality and litter, etc. But we also have this planning enforcement role, which really is a quite important one, because a lot of people get really upset about breaches of planning issues. And when you talk about trees and hedges or antennae and aerials or developments that are not built as per planning permission, that really gets the neighbouring and neighbours quite rightly into a tiz over it, and we need to sort that out for them. And under this policy, it sets out a clear way in which our officers, our enforcement team, will use the powers they have and use them impartially and timely in a transparent manner, which I think is really important as we move forward, because the planning process is always quite busy. There's always new applications coming along, and there's always chances where things haven't been done as per the planning applications, which will need an enforcement approach. And this sets out how we will do that. So opening it up to comments from cabinet members. Steve?
I'd just like to compliment Councillor Fear on bringing Trajan into a cabinet meeting. I shouldn't imagine his name's been mentioned before. No, I'd commend this. I think what's the point in having a planning committee, haven't got enforcement? You might as well not have planning. You might as well just do what you want. So I absolutely totally support this. So without enforcement, why do planning? So I mean, I think it's an excellent plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, David?
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to see this local planning enforcement plan in today's cabinet agenda. I thank the Deputy CEO and the portfolio holder for this detailed report. It is important that enforcement plans are constantly reviewed and kept up to date. Effective control over unauthorised developments protects our environment. Effective enforcement is important to maintain public confidence in the Borough Council planning system and helps to revitalise our borough. The proposal to adopt the local planning enforcement plan would comply with national guidance, and in doing so assist in ensuring any further action taken by the Borough Council Planning Authority would be carried out in accordance with best practice. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And with that, we'll move to the recommendations that the Cabinet approves and adopts the new planning enforcement plan for the Borough as attached in Appendix 1 to the report, as has been outlined by Councillor Fear. All agreed? Thank you. Our next item then is item 9, progression of a shared prosperity funded and supported project to deliver a household hub. And Jill is going to lead on this one for us.
Okay, thank you. After a successful bid, Newcastle Council have received funding from the UK Shared Prosperity Fund to provide a multi-agency assessment centre with accommodation, otherwise known as the Homeless Hub, in the borough. This includes staffing and security for 24 hours a day. I'm quite excited about this because I think it's something that we need. The facility will offer support to homeless individuals who are some of the most disadvantaged in society and who experience difficulty accessing mainstream services. The hub will provide a safe, secure accommodation area and offer support from agencies such as the Department of Works and Pensions, CAB, Rough Sleeping Services, housing providers, adult social care, homeless healthcare, drug and alcohol services, etc., building relationships and trust while working with individuals to develop paths to move on to non-emergency accommodation, secure job opportunities, overcome financial problems and sustain tenancies. It will be a one-stop shop to support all those who are vulnerable, including families, to get the right help and support during the current climate, i.e. the cost of living. A key step is acquiring the right property, and the recommendation for Cabinet is to note the business case and delegate authority as necessary to the Deputy Chief Executive, Service Director and portfolio holders to enable the purchase of a property and to operate the hub until 2025, and to keep Cabinet updated. Full details in the recommendations. Obviously, if I go through every one of those, I'll be doing the leader out of a job when he goes through them before we vote.
1,000 in capital, and 236,000 and 240,000 over the following 2 years to the revenue part of it. This is the shared prosperity fund that people talk about. I actually think it's in the old days. I think I'm right in saying that this was European money, but of course it would be European money minus the top slice that Europe would take for itself. This is the whole money coming through. One of the huge benefits of getting out of Europe. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. You're quite right. Yeah, this is one of many schemes that we've got funding for the borough as part of the Shared Prosperity Fund, and that's benefiting all sorts of projects. Some run by Keele University, some run by the council itself, and this is the key one for us really. And I think that emergency accommodation during bad weather, particularly in the depths of winter, access to showers and laundry, and a place to stay clean and warm, and a safe place for the vulnerable to help with advice and need of appointments to get those fixed home addresses, which is what the end product needs to be from this, isn't it? It's okay scooping people up off the road, putting them into some sort of temporary accommodation, and then they leave the next morning. This is ongoing support for them to help them to relaunch their lives. There may be many reasons why they've ended up on the street, but I think we have a role as a council to ensure that we can get people into fixed home addresses so that they can relaunch their lives. And of course, the government have got a aim to make homelessness eradicated by 2025, and the council plays a key role in doing that through things such as this. So really welcome this. And the recommendations are, because you've left it to me, it's meaty recommendations 1 to 5. I'll read them out. Delegate authority to the Deputy Chief Exec in consultation with the portfolio holder for community safety and wellbeing, town centres and growth, and one council, people and partnerships. That's 3 portfolios. Enter negotiations to require purchase or lease independently or with partners a property for the homelessness hub, and complete any related property transactions. Delegated authority to the Deputy Chief Exec, again in consultation with the portfolio holders, to submit a planning application for any changes required and secure any related permissions in relation to the homelessness hub if necessary. 3, delegate authority again to the Chief Executive with the portfolio holders to award a contract necessary for any building alterations for the future use of a homeless hub. And then delegate authority again to the Service Director in consultation with portfolio holders to produce operation to operate the getting mixed up over my own words here, the hub up to 2025. And 3, continue to receive some updates on the homeless hub, including proposals for operation beyond the current 2025 funding provision. That's really important as well. Once we set this up, we don't want it to expire when the funding expires, so we have to think how we can create more funding for this or get more funding. And I think it's okay the government saying they want to eradicate homelessness by 2025, but the years after there'll still be pressure for these services, of course, ongoing pressure, and that will require ongoing funding. So I think Stephen may be writing another letter to the government in 2025 asking for funding to take this forward, and I think it's right that comes and we deliver that on behalf of the government as their local delivery partner here in Newcastle, but we can't afford that through the funds that we currently have, given budgetary constraints which are affecting all authorities. So there's recommendations 1 to 5. Any more speakers? Not seeing any, so can we agree the recommendations? Great. Thank you. Next is item 10, which is the delivery of an occupational health service, and going out to procure a new provider for that. And I think this is really timely because we're having a debate at the moment about sickness absence in the council, and actually not just sickness absence in the council, but across the sectors across the country. I saw a report recently about sickness in some sectors is really high, and that's no different here in local authority land neither. And so what we're asking here is for us to procure a occupational health service to keep obviously the well-being of our workforce, and also in keeping with our sickness reduction plan to enable us to get sickness more under control as we move forward. And I think this will take account of the entire journey of an employment within the council, from new starters through to those that are looking to strive for better positions in the council, and then those that are coming towards the end of working for the council as they approach retirement. So it's wrapped around to help all staff, wherever position they are within the council and within their working journey, so to speak. And this will also, as I say, help us to reduce that sickness absence, which we'll be discussing further in the performance data that's coming up. So I've no problem of moving this recommendation, but I'll first of all open it up to any comments from cabinet members. looking around, not seen, so he will quickly try and find his recommendations because he's lost his page. And the recommendation is that Cabinet note the multi-stranded requirement for robust support and accessible service to support staff and maintain their own well-being and that of their colleagues, that the council conducts a procurement exercise to retender for a service to provide the future occupational health service, and authorised to award a contract following the tender evaluation is delegated to the chief executive in conjunction with the service director for people and performance. All agreed? Thank you. We now then move to item 11, which is the performance, finance and performance review report, first quarter 23-24. The first part of it is that financial performance. So Steve's going to introduce that, and then we will go on to the performance data in each of the portfolios. But Steve, over to you for initial.
There's a lot more information on this than there used to be, because of course we're an open and transparent council with nothing to hide. So there's a lot of information on here, but the main point from my point of view is the revenue budget part of it. The quarter one projected outturn on the general fund revenue account for the year is £16.857 million. This represents a balanced outturn for the year. However, some adverse variances have occurred in the first quarter, which include income shortfalls and sales fees and charges amount to 153,000, a shortfall of 109,000 housing benefits subsidy grant regarding accommodation and payments for which full subsidy is not claimable, a pay award that is forecast to be in excess of the amount provided for in the budget. These adverse variances have been offset in full by the following variable variances: utilisation of the cost of living reserve that was established during the budget setting for 23-24, the interest receivable on cash that the council holds in terms of town deal and future high street funding, together with Section 31 grants, and remaining coronavirus grants that are payable to central government totals 301,000 at quarter one. The net result of that is, at the moment, we've got a balanced revenue budget for the first quarter, which is a good position to be in. Normally by now we're talking about, I don't know, £150,000. I think it was 152,000 this time last year. So we're in a much better position. I'm happy to support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments to Steve about the financial plan? Okay, we'll move then to the performance data. And overall, we're looking at in the region 76% of our measures are on track. This is the first real quarter that we, starting a new year with our new financial performance data. And you will, those eagle-eyed members of the public will see there is a page missing relating to some of David's street scene indicators. That's because of the reporting and performance data will come to our next quarter on those. So we're sort of bedding in this new set of indicators. But as we go through them, as we usually do at Cabinet, we'll start with our first portfolio priority, which is one council delivering for local people. And the first indicators there are under David Hutchinson's portfolio relating to hygiene and inspections. Anything to comment, David?
Yeah, we have two entries from the Regulatory Services Department. First one, very good. The target is 5%. The current status is 0.69%. This is the percentage of food premises with a zero food rating. So I mean that's excellent. It's green. The next one is red at 67%. Target is 90%. But this is food premises that have been inspected on time. Unfortunately, there was one food premise due to staff absence and delays in obtaining access to the premises that we didn't have access to, hence it's 67%.
Thank you.
Yes, we are on target with it. I think it's an excellent performance. This is something we looked at when we first took over, and fit to perform as well as it's doing now and as efficiently as the council is doing. People need this money, and we're getting out to them as quick as possible. I think it's an excellent result, to be honest with you.
Okay, thank you. And over the page is the indicator for sickness absence. And as I've said earlier, we're taking measures. We have our sickness absence reduction plan. And also I should say that our scrutiny committee next Monday are receiving a report that drills down into the issues of, puts it in the context of national issues, but also says what we're doing locally to obviously bring that sickness level down. Other couple of HR indicators on there are showing not too much, a green one and slightly below baseline, but I think the sickness one is the one we're concentrating on, and we've taken action and measures, and scrutiny will have a look at those and give a view on them next Monday. Next one at the bottom there is anything to do with health and safety there, Steve? Have you got anything to say on that one?
Yeah, I don't get too hung up on this really. Last year it was 1, this year it's 2, so it's 100% worse, but it's 1 more in effect.
Yeah.
And I think if you read the speed, as long as it carries on, that will not be less than last year anyway.
Okay, and then over the page, still within our One Council delivering for local people, we've got a series of our customer service indicators there. Pleased to say that they are, a couple of them at the top there are on green, which is our customer hub request resolved, and also the answers, phone calls answered in a certain handling time. And then there's 2 there on council tax, Steve.
I've got nothing to add apart from that. They're both excellent.
Yes. Okay. And then over the page, we've got a number of digital transactions, which shows that our new website and our the way we can handle more inquiries and resolution to inquiries online shows an increase in green there, which is always very good. And then the number of calls by the customer hub there as well, which is showing up as a blue. But there is some reasons for that, which are as covered in the comments there. And then the total use of the website again is got some. If anybody can read that, they're better than me. They probably need a magnifying glass, but that's the smallest print I've ever seen. But there is reasons there. Well, that's not a green, but it's actually in a blue. Over the page, we then move to again in One People and Partnerships. You've got some for David there relating to recycling, etc. David.
Yeah, the first one in the sustainable environment portfolio shows the percentage that was collected for dry recycling. It's normally a lot higher than 19.67%, but due to the weather that we've had, some weeks we've been collecting 100 tons of gardening waste. So the overall mix between the gardening waste, the food waste and the dry recycling has meant that the dry recycling is slightly less than the 25% target that we had. But I think it's just to do with the gardening waste has been exceptionally high.
Any other comments on any of the others?
Yep. The second one is the food household collections. We're currently on 33% of houses. The target's 35%. We're under target by 2%. However, we're better than the same period last year. We're under target by 2% only because we've reset the targets on the One Council programme, which is good. The residual waste per household, again, that's green. The target's 107.5 and 106.2, which is excellent. The only real negative one we have, again, is to do with the sickness. The number of missed curbside transactions is 77. And basically that's saying that due to the high sickness level, and we also had some vehicle issues, so we missed a few collections, down on where we want it to be, but I'm confident it'll bounce back next quarter.
Yes, particularly the department relating to this service had a sickness bug, didn't it, during this quarter, which went through the entire workforce, so to speak, as it usually does. So that affected some of the decisions. But I think the key for that is the collection. The catch-ups were really quick, and people didn't have to wait weeks and weeks like they had to do under the old recycling system, which we inherited from the previous administration that was breaking down, and a bit of bad weather meant we were delayed for weeks and weeks. It was caught up. Most of these collections were caught up in the same week, so people wouldn't even notice some of the difference really if it's the next day or the day after. As long as it's within that week, I think is the key, was what we always wanted from our new recycling system. Okay, thank you for that. We'll move to our priority number 2, it's successful and sustainable borough. First one is the percentage of the investment portfolio vacant, council-owned portfolio, showing the green.
I'll say something about this. Yeah, I know we continually hear about how all the council premises are empty and this, that, and the other, and you know, nobody wants to hear it. Well, our target's 12%, and we're down to 6.9%. So I don't really think council-owned-wise we're actually doing that badly.
Yes, I mean, particularly on social media, one of the many complaints about empty shops in the town is, why isn't the council lowering the rents? And of course, as you can see here, most of our properties are, of the very few that are in the town, are rented out. And of course, the others are in private ownership. There's nothing we can really do to influence that. We don't have a say on the level of business rates neither. That's another thing. The council setting its business rates too high. Well, that's set nationally, isn't it? So we can't influence that. Right, the next set of indicators are in Andy's portfolio for planning. So I'll hand over to a good picture as far as I can see, Andy.
Yeah, I think that's right, Simon. There's one that's yellow, not green, but again, the small print matters, doesn't it? You can see that we've got a significant movement in the right direction there. There is a review going on with this. We've had a look at that earlier in this session in regards of enforcement and such like. So that's moving in the right direction, and I think, you know, with effort we can get there. Going over the page, somewhat confusingly, the bar is both something to be shot above and below. But if we bounce backwards and forwards, we can see that we're on the right side of the bar, and substantially on the right side of the bar, almost invisible, in fact, on the bottom one there. So I think things are going very well in that regard, and I would like to thank those in planning for the hard work they've put in to make sure that that's happening.
Thank you, Andy. Moving on to our third priority, health and active and safe communities. There's a page of 4 indicators there under Jill's portfolio. So over to you, Jill. Community safety.
Oh no, I've got one on the page before that. Yeah. With the DFGs, yeah, I'm quite happy with the way DFGs are going, because as you know, we took the Disabled Facilities Grant Service into house on the 1st of April this year, and they're working through them quite well. The backlog that they had before, they're ploughing the way through. When I get to antisocial behaviour, it's a bit mixed, really. The first indicator I've got is quite positive for the early trend. It's roughly on target, but obviously, with antisocial behaviours, we're waiting for Q2 and Q3 of monitoring to identify any trends, but we are working very well to reduce antisocial behaviour and with partners.
Part of your portfolio. Next one is the in the healthy, active, safe communities is the culture and leisure offer, and I think it's, as you can see there, on behalf of Jill, I will introduce this. Jill Waring, it's the museum again showing you know, its worth to the borough with increases in its usage. Then you've got J2 membership growth again over target. Again, that shows the bounce back of J2 following the pandemic and going from strength to strength, given the fact now that we have 2 really good sports and leisure and swimming pool facilities in the borough, that both are, the membership is buoyant in both. And then the customer satisfaction in J2 is brilliant to see that is above target. And of course, we have had issues over the years with structural issues of the J2, and we've worked on those since we came in 2017. And got J2 to where we want it to be, and that's been reflected in customer satisfaction now, which is really good. Series now of in back to Jill's on the housing agenda, Jill. So over to you.
Yeah, in the main, it's pretty positive. I'd say not all of it, obviously. Well, you've got your live application on the housing register, that is showing negative, but I think that just reflects the amount or the increased demand for social housing, really. And we've already discussed homelessness and potential homelessness earlier on in the agenda, which will have an increase on this with the live applications on the housing register. I thought I'd missed a page then. Yeah, the rest of them are, for me, they're quite positive. The number of lets is positive to registered providers on the housing waiting list. The total rough sleepers is very good. We have 5 of those have a Stoke connection, and 6 are quite entrenched in our target priority group. But that is a really good figure for the rough sleepers. And when the new homeless hub opens, they would be targeted to help them to get into tenancies and employment and sustain those tenancies. The emergency homeless presentations, they have gained quite a lot, and I think we're seeing now where private landlords are selling their properties, and we're getting a lot of families now that are coming through because when they've been given the notice to quit or eviction, they then have to find somewhere to live, and of course there isn't enough housing going around. But I think that is a trend that all councils are going to see. And going on to the next service area, yeah, we're building on our work with Staffordshire Police. Yep, I'm pleased with that because we've done a lot of work with the policing team. We've got the Safe Space and Street Pastor scheme started. The public space protection orders are going well. And of course, with the funding we got from Safer Streets Round 4, we've improved gating, lighting and CCTV.
Thank you, Jill. That's good news. And then our fourth priority and last one is the town centre for all. So there's, Steve, a couple of nice screens in there for you to talk about.
I was down at the Arsene Market on Sunday again, and what an enjoyable time that was. Number of car parking tickets going up as well, which is encouraging. But on something as well, it's actually not to do with me, but I went to the museum on Saturday. There was a series of talks about the Battle of Blore Heath, which for anybody who knows the medieval history, the Blore Heath was the sort of the second battle of the Wars of the Roses. And I was there for 4.5 hours. And it was absolutely excellent. And I had 3 cups of tea. And I thought, no, I don't have any cake. No, I had 3 cups of tea. And I bought myself a picture of old Newcastle with the castle of the lake and everything. I thought I'll have that as well. So as well as watching these evenings, I spent £30 altogether, and I had a thoroughly enjoyable 4 hours. And I would recommend anybody, to go. I'll come to go to the museum. It was really these talks were excellent. I really enjoyed it. I could plug the museum, I might as well.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, I think it's really encouraging that the usage of the car parks is on an upward trajectory, and I think that shows that with the reduction in the £1 after 1 o'clock and the free on a Sunday shows that people will come into the town if there's something to come in for to shop, and we aren't our parking fees aren't restrictive in that respect. That town centre footfall is really encouraging. We get that information off the bid from their monthly calculations, and that shows an increase on last year's first quarter, which is really encouraging to show that people are actually coming into the town. Take that with the parking data of more people parking on a car park shows that a vibrant town centre. I see on social media so many times that particularly on Facebook, where people have got more characters to use than they do on X or wherever it's called now, or Instagram, is that they say the town is empty, but anybody that goes into town for example this afternoon, we've seen that it's a busy town, it's a vibrant town. It could be better, and of course we're working to make it better. But I think I often go to Stafford and I often go to Stone, and I don't think that those town centres are more vibrant than Newcastle's. In fact, some of them are worse, and some of them are like ghost towns in various areas. But I think we are a town centre that can be on the up. And I think going back to our regeneration item earlier and the appointment of Capital and Centric, that only helps us to build up our town centre to where we want it to be. And then, of course, the market you talked about. See, I was at the Artisan yesterday. Yeah, vibrant market on a Sunday there. And you'll see that new bit of data that's been added at the bottom there, which makes reference to the occupancy of Pacific markets, and you'll see that the obviously the specialist event markets are showing good occupancy. So are the Antiques Forum, but we've still got that general market, which is on the other days. We need to do some work on that, and I know our proposals that are going to come forward later in the year to use some of that future High Streets Funds money to help to bring the market on even further than what we have at the moment. Of course, it's a vastly different market than what we inherited in 2017-18 when it was on its final legs, or so it seemed. We've brought it back from the brink. It's an award-winning market, and particularly when we have the events markets and also the Antique Forum, it's a busy market, and we want to have some of the other days being busy as well. And some of the changes we're going to bring forward in the autumn will actually help us to do that as well. So that's coming later in the year. And Stephen just reminded me, a multi-award winning market we now have, which is great. So that's the performance data. We've gone through that in detail, which we're we're asked to do, and that's part of the recommendation that we do look at that. All agreed? Thank you. Next item is our forward plan, which is on page 169. We'll quickly go through this. The first couple of pages refer to our meeting today, but then we go into October meeting where we've got some real good items coming forward on regeneration, Chatterley Valley, Rycroft redevelopment, award of a contract for the Kids Grove Shared Services Hub. Over the page, we've got also issues relating, obviously, our regular update on Walleys Quarry, and also a proposal for a solar energy proposals up in Kiel, which we'll hear more about at the next meeting. And also for David, importantly, our review of our sustainable environment strategy and our road to net zero, which will be a really important paper to bring in October. And also our urban tree planting strategy, phase 5, which is about planting trees on those green spaces we protected, over 60 green spaces across the borough that we protected in all parts of the urban area, particularly to protect those green lungs for people, and also plant trees on them as part of our net zero strategy. And then also market improvement, which I just talked about. And then we have a November cabinet, which is more on the town deals, more on Walleys Quarry, accommodation policy, and more on Chatterley Valley. And over the page, finally, we'll be looking at Q2 finance, and also our council annual report, and also the draft savings proposals, which we talked about earlier as part of our budget setting process as we go forward. So really a lot of business to come between now and Christmas as we move forward on a regeneration of our town, on our green agenda, and also on setting the budgets. So that's our forward plan. All agreed? Item 13 is urgent business, not received any. Item 14 is disclosure of exempt information even. Don't have any of that, so we've no need to go into private session. And we haven't had any public expressions of speakers, but we've had the question from the councillor earlier, which was taken under the item at which it was directed. So that concludes the meeting today. Thank you very much.
Rob, can you turn off the recording?